While playing through the demo for Lies of P, I wanted to thoroughly explore the small chunk of the world we were given access to. And in doing so, I discovered a lot of tidbits about what we're in store for when the game releases this September. From item descriptions to environmental clues to documents outlining brief pieces of Crot's history, there was plenty to dig around in to gain a better understanding of the world being crafted for Lies of P. With that said, I wanted to bring some of what I found to the forefront, as I have a feeling this game is going to have a significant amount of lore to explore once we get our hands on it. So let's get started with 10 interesting bits of lore and storytelling found within the demo of Lies of P. Weapon pieces have their own lore. In Lies of P, you can customize your weapons, swapping out handles and blades. But did you know that the item descriptions for each are unique? When we look at the Crot police baton head, it tells us that after a violent protest with the factory labor union, it became customary for police batons in Crot to be painted black. The reason should not need explanation. However, if we look at the Crot police baton handle, we get a quote from a petty thief stating, "Do not ever rob a police officer's home. You won't go to prison. It's a one-way ticket to the sewers, with your head busted in by a police baton." Both pieces of flavor text speak to the brutality of Crot's police force, but they do it in unique ways with different stories. It seems like each customizable weapon's blade and handle will offer lore in this way, meaning there will be plenty to explore for people who want to paint a better picture in their minds of the city of Crot before the puppet uprising. P wakes up on the Blue Ferry. This one is pretty straightforward. While exploring Crot Central Station, we can find various train information boards outlining the times of arrival, train numbers, train names, where they're headed, their track, and their status. As expected during a puppet apocalypse, all trains are cancelled except for one, the Blue Ferry. This is the train we wake up on at the beginning of the game, where P comes to life. We can see that Crot Central Station was this train's final stop, which means that P was likely being brought to Crot from somewhere else, but from where and by whom is still a mystery. Puppets are speaking their own language. If you were paying attention during your boss battles with the Parade Master and the Scrapped Watchman, you may have noticed strange symbols showing beneath their health bars from time to time. These are always accompanied by roars and groans, meaning that these symbols are whatever language the puppets speak to each other. Interestingly, even though he's a puppet himself, P doesn't seem to understand what's being said to him. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that at some point, we'll either unlock an ability to understand what the puppets are saying, or we'll have a near automata situation, where in New Game Plus, we can actually read the horrified words of the puppets we're fighting, making us question who the real villain of the story is. Boss enemies have their own stories. Much like our favorite Souls games, when defeating a boss, we're left with their essence and some flavor text helping to tell their stories. However, it seems like documents through the game will actually shed even more light on these enemies. We can find a 2-page document on the Scrapped Watchman outlining how Vanini, the man behind puppet production, wanted to create a mascot for City Hall who would help the police force take down criminals, but its excessive use of force and overcharged battery caused electric explosions, which led to several lawsuits against the city, leading to the puppet lying dormant behind City Hall. What opens this story up further is that when unattended, the Watchman acted as a mascot, playing with children, which caused many slum children to flock to City Hall. When looking at his dropped item, we can see it's called the Broken Hero's Ergo, and it tells us how the Watchman contorted and broke from the adult's desires. However, he never forgot the children who considered him their friend. This speaks towards the humanity developing within these puppets, and shows us how flavor text and collectible documents will come together to tell stories throughout Lies of P. Hotel Crot may extend far below the surface. Speaking of collectible documents, Vanini's Crot Landmark Guide tells us more about the various attractions in the city of Crot. Through the first edition of these guides, we learn that Hotel Crot was once a castle owned by an aristocrat who formed a cult after receiving a revelation from a radiant tree, which is either an incredible coincidence or a fun nod toward Elden Ring's own cultist tree beliefs. It was then a mental hospital which burned down, leaving no records of its past. We also learn that the hotel extends far underground, meaning that at some point, we may just be able to explore the depths of Hotel Crot in the main game. The Stone Plague drives you insane. While the presence of the Stone Plague is felt and discussed often throughout the demo of Lies of P, we don't get to see too many signs of it during our playthrough. We are able to find one victim of the plague, whose body is covered in rigid stone and bright teal pustules that have seemingly exploded from within. We can also see that Antonia is in the early stages of the Stone Plague, as there are some crystals growing on her face. The physical damage caused by the plague is apparent, but it seems to also affect people's minds. We can see this to some extent when helping the woman behind the window in the Plague District, but the depth of the mental toll the plague takes can be seen elsewhere. There's a collectible called the Torn Doodle that shows someone's descent into madness while affected by the plague, talking about peeling their skin and finding blue blood, a blue angel, a joyful appetite, and blue death. It ends on the lines, "I'm alive, it itches," which is strongly reminiscent of the Itchy Tasty document found in the original Resident Evil. The Mad Donkey is dying. The only human enemy we face in the Lies of P demo is the Mad Donkey. We find him pounding on Geppetto's carriage, demanding answers for the puppet uprising, where we promptly do battle with him and save our father. We learn more about this enigmatic enemy when we look at the flavor text associated with his costume. Apparently he was a known madman, and after falling terminally ill, he no longer feared the puppets or the petrification disease. He was seeking the truth behind his colleagues' bloodshed. His mask also tells us he was blinded by his stubbornness, which makes his donning of the donkey mask all the more fitting. We don't learn what his terminal illness was, but I'd venture to guess it was the Stone Plague, as his mask hid his face, and should it be removed, I bet we'd see the beginnings of stones, just like Antonia. The Black Rabbits are members of the Stalkers. In a previous trailer for Lies of P, we saw enemies clad in rabbit masks, holding a coffin with the word liar inside. Thanks to Polendina, we may have an idea who these characters are. The Stalkers are broken into two factions, the Bastards and the Sweepers. It's most likely that they belong to the Sweepers, as their motto is more aligned with the behavior we see from these rabbit-masked individuals. "We always repay what is owed" makes them seem much more cutthroat than the Bastards, and they likely see your life as what is owed, as puppets are murdering the people en masse. Music makes P more human. We know that the game is going to incorporate a lying system that allows P to stand apart from other puppets and lie in order to make progress throughout Crot. When you lie, you get a notification that P's strings are reacting, and from what we've learned in the new gameplay breakdown, it seems like this speaks to P becoming more human with each lie he tells. But this isn't the only way to get P's strings to react. If we lie to the woman suffering from the petrification disease after giving her the baby doll, we receive the music track Feel. Upon listening to this track on the hotel gramophone, P's strings react again. It seems that music makes P more human, and we'll likely want to collect every record we possibly can in the main game. The story of Pinocchio exists in the world of Lies of P. Up until this point, we've assumed that Lies of P will be a dark retelling of the story of Pinocchio. However, it looks like things will be a bit more complicated than that, When exploring Hotel Crot, you can examine a bookshelf where Gemini will ask you if you're familiar with the story of a mischievous wooden puppet. This story is famous across Crot because of someone who loved the story deeply. Gemini, however, cannot remember who that person was, and as Gemini is a puppet as well, it seems like that knowledge is being kept from him intentionally. Whoever decided to craft the world in the image of Pinocchio is likely our main antagonist. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's Geppetto, but who knows? We won't get real answers to any of our questions about Lies of P's story until this September, when we get to experience it for ourselves. Personally, I can't wait to dig through the corners of Crot, searching for every scrap of material that unfurls the story of this city and the events that led up to our waking up on the Blue Ferry. The atmosphere throughout the demo is equal parts mysterious and hopeless, a winning combination in my book. Hopefully the game delivers on this promising demo, and we have plenty to explore when we finally have our hands on a finished copy of Lies of P.